Do you know why your offer isn't selling? It's because you built it backwards, okay? You started with what you're good at instead of what people will actually pay for. And I know that stings to hear, but somebody needs to tell you the truth. And a great product in a terrible market will always fail, but a decent product in a hungry market will always win. So if you're sitting there wondering, why is nobody buying your course or your program? It's not because your stuff isn't good, right? It's because you skipped the most important step and went straight to building, okay? And in the next few minutes, I'm going to show you the exact framework that fixes this so you can actually start making money instead of just creating stuff that nobody buys, okay? Now, let me ask you something. When you're building an offer, what do you start with, okay? Be honest. Most of you start with, what you want to create, right? And that right there is why you're still struggling. That's the biggest strategic mistake I see people make time and time again. And I'm going to break down why, and then I'm going to give you the exact framework to fix it. So here's the thing that nobody wants to hear, but I'm going to tell you anyways. A great product in the wrong market fails every single time, right? And a modest product in a big market succeeds. And I know that hurts to hear because, you've probably spent all this time building your product and you think it's amazing, but nobody wants to buy it. And it doesn't matter how good it is, right? So the first thing you have to do, and this is a non-negotiable, you have to diagnose the market first, okay? You don't want to start with your idea. You start with who has the problem and whether they will actually pay for a solution, okay? Not whether they say they'll pay, but whether they're currently paying right now for similar solutions. And this is where most people screw up because, they confuse interest with intent, right? People will tell you, yeah, I'd buy that. And then when you launch, nobody buys. And the question is why, right? And it's because they were being polite and they weren't actually in that pain. They weren't actively looking for a solution right now. So let me give you the framework. But this is how you actually build offers that print money. And I'm going to walk you through this step by step. And just so you know, this isn't theory. This is what works when you're actually trying to scale a business. So before you do anything, before you write any copy, before you create any deliverables, you have to make one massive decision. Do you want a high touch niche product or do you want a paid media scalable product? And you have to pick one because this decision dictates everything that comes afterwards. It dictates your pricing, it dictates your language, and it dictates what you're actually delivering. Okay? You cannot do both at the same time. So if you want to scale with paid ads, you need a much broader approach to this, okay? Cold traffic doesn't exactly know you yet. So your offer needs instant clarity, something they can grasp within seconds of seeing your ad. And if you want a high touch niche, you can be more specific and you can charge more, but you're going to be limited on volume. Now, most people try to do both and they end up with neither. So right now, before we go any further, pause and answer this question. Are you building for scale or are you building for magnitude? Because everything I'm about to tell you branches from that split decision. Now, once you know your scale objective, now you do the market audit. And this is the part that most people skip and it absolutely kills them, right? So here's what you're looking for. You're looking to try to figure out how many people are actively buying in this vertical right now, okay? Not how many people have the problem, not how many people might want a solution, how many people are actually pulling out their credit card and buying something similar to what you want to offer. And here's a good rule of thumb to go by. If you can't find at least 3 to 5 competitors who are actively selling and getting customers, you might be in a market that just doesn't exist. And that's a big problem because, you're going to spend 6 months building something that nobody's going to buy, right? So go look at your competitors, look at their ads, look at their websites, look at their testimonials, and find out, are they getting traction? Are people actually buying? Because if they are, that's proof that the market exists. But if they're not, or if you can't find any competitors, that's a big red flag. And then you need to estimate your TAM, which is essentially your total addressable market. How big is your market? And if you're trying to scale with paid ads, you need a market that's at least big enough to support your growth goals, okay? If the market's too small, you either need to widen your avatar or you need to accept that you're going to be limited on volume, okay? I see this all the time with people who are like, I want to help vegan CrossFitters who live in Montana. It's like, okay, it's super specific and that's good, but there's like 50 of those people. So your business is capped at 50 customers, right? And you have to think about this stuff up front. Now, here's where most people waste months of their life, okay? They validate the market, then they immediately go build everything from scratch. And that's a big mistake, okay? When you're first validating an offer, you should assemble it, not create it from scratch. Okay, so what exactly does that mean? It means instead of building everything custom, use licensed assets, you use done for you templates, you use partners, you use stuff like that that already exists, and you package it together. This is way faster, way cheaper, and way less risky because here's the thing. You don't know if people are going to buy yet. So why would you spend 6 months building a custom platform and filming 40 hours of content when you could assemble something in 2 weeks and start selling it to see if anyone actually wants it? Okay. I'll give you an example. Okay. Let's say you're building a program to help real estate agents get more clients. Right? Now, instead of creating all your own templates, scripts, and systems, you can simply license templates from someone else, okay? You could partner with a CRM provider, you could use existing frameworks, and just package them in a way that's specific to real estate agents, right? Now, you can prove demand before you build the heavy stuff. And then once you know people will buy, once you have revenue coming in, then you can go back and create the custom stuff. Okay. But most people do it backwards. They build first and then they try and find customers. That's why they fail. Okay. So right now, if you're thinking about creating something, ask yourself, can I assemble this instead? Can I get to the market in 2 weeks instead of 6 months? Because speed matters more than perfection when you're validating, right? But speed means nothing if your core promise is weak or vague, okay? And that's what we need to nail next. So the first thing you need is a crystal clear specific outcome, okay? Essentially one sentence that describes what the buyer will have or be able to do afterwards. And here's where most people mess up, okay? They make it way too vague. They're like, I help people grow their business, or, I help people get healthy. Nobody's going to buy that because it's not specific enough to believe. So you want to be so specific that someone can picture exactly what their life looks like after they buy, right? And here's the counterintuitive part. The more specific you make the promise, the broader the appeal. Right? And I know that sounds backwards, but here's why it works. When you're vague, people have to guess what you mean, and everyone guesses differently. And when you're specific, everyone can understand it the same way, and more people will believe that you can actually deliver it. Okay. So let me give you some examples. Here's a bad promise. I help entrepreneurs scale their business. Here's a good promise. I help service business owners add $50,000 in monthly revenue in 90 days without hiring any more employees. Now, do you see the difference? The second one is way more specific, but way more believable, right? You know exactly what you're getting. You know the timeline, you know what you don't have to do, and that specifically makes it easier to sell, okay? It makes it easier to deliver, it makes it easier to create testimonials. Everything just gets easier when your promise is very specific. So right now, write down your promise in one sentence. And if you can't make it specific enough that someone could measure whether you delivered it or not, it's not specific enough. So go back and make it tighter, right? Having a clear promise is crucial because there's still a problem. Digital products don't feel real, and that hesitation costs you sales. You can't hold them, you can't touch them, they don't feel real. And that makes people hesitate before they buy because their brain is like, what am I actually buying here? Okay, so you have to create tangibility through packaging, okay? You have to make the intangible feel real, and here's how you're going to do it. Okay, first you name everything. Don't say you're just getting training videos. Say you're getting the 7-figure sales script library or the client closing blueprint or whatever it may be, right? Give it a name that sounds like a real thing. Second, you create immediate use deliverables. Now, this is huge because most people's offers are like, buy my program and then in 1 month you'll learn this, and then month 2 you'll learn that, okay? Now, nobody wants to wait that long. Instead, give them something they can use right now, right? Like a one-pager, a template, a script, a checklist, something that they can download and use in the next 10 minutes, right? Because that makes it feel real, and that gives them a quick win, which increases their belief. Third, you use clear, short timelines, which I'm going to get into more in a second. But the point is, you want everything to feel concrete and immediate, not abstract and distant. So go through your offer right now and ask yourself, okay, what can I give them on day one, but even with tangible deliverables? So if you're speaking the wrong language, you're losing the sale before people even understand what you're offering, okay? Your language has to live inside the customer's psyche, not outside of it. You might be asking, what does that mean? It means you have to use the exact words and phrases that your audience uses, not the technical terms, not the industry jargon, not the smart sounding language, their words, because here's what happens when you use language that's outside of their psyche. They essentially have to mentally translate what you're saying into what it means for them, right? And every time they have to translate, you lose attention and you lose trust. Okay, let me give you a little example. So if you're selling to real estate agents and you say, we help you optimize your lead acquisition funnel through multi-channel attribution modeling. right? They're like, what do you mean? Right? They kind of have to stop and translate that. But if you say we help you get more seller listings from Facebook without spending more money on ads, they immediately get it because that's how they talk. That's how they think about their problems. So here's what you do. You go mine your audience, right? Read their comments, read their messages, read the reviews of competitor products, and write down the exact phrases they use to describe their problems and their desires, right? And then you use those exact phrases in your copy. Not a fancy version of those phrases, the actual words they said. Because when someone reads their own words back to them, they immediately feel understood. And that's when they buy. Getting the language right is very critical, but there's another element that dramatically affects whether someone pulls the trigger. You need to anchor your front end promise to a short timeline, right? Like 14 to 21 days max. Okay, now you might be asking why? Because most buyers are short-term thinkers. So you need to word your front end so that the measurable win appears in days or in a few weeks, not months, right? So go through your sales page, your ads, your emails, wherever you mention time, and make sure you're using short timelines on the front end, okay? Now, you can talk about the longer transformation later, but the hook has to be fast, right? Once you've nailed the messaging, you need to think about how you're actually showing this to people. And the framework that works best is show then tell. And you might be asking, what does that mean? It means you show them a quick, tangible result first, then you briefly explain why it works, then you offer them the thing, right? Now, most people do this backwards. They tell, then show, or they just tell and never show, right? So here's the structure. Let's say you're running a video ad, right? First 10 seconds, you show the deliverable or the result, like you pull up a template on the screen, or you show a before and after, or you show someone using the thing, right? The next 40 seconds, you demonstrate it. You actually fill in the template, or you walk through one action, or you actually show how it works, right? This is the show part. Then in 25 seconds, you briefly explain how it works. This is the tell part. You don't need a long explanation, right? Just enough so they understand the mechanism. And then the final 15 seconds is your call to action. Get the template, join the program, and whatever it is, right? Here's the key. You use that same clip as your ad creative, as your landing page, as your retargeting asset, as your social proof. One piece of content, multiple uses, right? This works because you're reducing abstraction, right? Instead of just talking about what you offer, you're literally showing it, right? And when people can see it, they believe it more, and they're more likely to buy. So if you're not currently showing your deliverables or showing results in your ads, you're leaving a ton of money on the table, okay? Go create a show then tell piece of creative right now. Showing your offer helps, but there's a specific type of deliverable that converts better than almost anything else, right? This ties into the tangibility thing, but it's so important that I have to give it its own section, right? You need to include done for you deliverables on the front end of your offer, okay? Templates, scripts, checklists, swipe files, whatever it is, right? Things that people can literally just copy and use without having to create anything themselves. Now, why does this matter? Because done for you components reduce the work that buyers have to do before they see value, okay? And the less work they have to do, the more likely they are to buy, and the less likely they are to refund, okay? Here's what I mean. So let's say you're selling a program on how to get clients, okay? Version A is just training videos that teach them how to do outreach. Version B is the training video plus a done-for-you outreach script plus a done-for-you email template plus a done-for-you follow-up sequence. Version B will convert way higher because people look at it and they're like, oh, I can just literally use this tomorrow, right? They don't have to figure it out themselves. They don't have to create it themselves. They just plug and play. So here's your front-end done-for-you structure, okay? Step 1 is you give them a one-page template immediately after purchase. Not in a week, not after they watch module 1, immediately, right? Step 2 is you give them a 10-minute do this now video walkthrough, short, actionable, one specific thing they should do right away. Step 3 is kind of optional. You can do a 60-minute onboarding call or a group session, but the first 2 steps have to happen fast, right? This order gives them early wins. It reduces refunds, it increases completion rates, and it makes them more likely to buy your high ticket offer. So don't skip the done for you components because they're not nice to have, they're a must have, right? Now that you understand what makes a single offer convert, let's talk about how to structure your entire product suite to maximize revenue. Because most of you should not have just one offer, you should have a ladder, right? Front end should be your low friction offer. This is your done for you template offer or your mini course or your low ticket, right? The goal of the front end is to acquire customers and prove value fast, not to make all your money, okay? Mid-tier offer is group coaching or a higher level done for you or certification or licensing. This is where you start making real money. This is your bread and butter. Backend is high touch consulting or done with you or partnerships, right? Now, this is for people who want to work with you directly. And here's how this works together, okay? The front end is your acquisition engine, right? You can spend money to acquire customers at break even or loss because you know you're going to make it back on the mid and back end, right? Most people try to make all of their money on the front end and then wonder why their ads don't work. It's very simple. It's because you can't acquire cold traffic profitably if you're trying to sell high ticket right away. You need an ascension ladder. So map out your ladder right now, okay? What's your front end offer? What's your mid tier? What's your back end? And make sure they're connected, right? Make sure there's a natural progression from one thing to the next. The last thing I want to hit on is you have to track this stuff, okay? You can't just launch an offer and hope it works. You have to track the numbers and iterate based on what they're telling you, okay? So here's what you're measuring. TAM, how big is your total addressable market? CTR, what percentage of people who see your ad actually click it? CVR, what percentage of people who land on your page buy? And here's a couple of benchmarks for you. If your CTR is below 1%, your hook is weak or you're targeting the wrong people. If your CVR is below 2 to 3%, your offer is weak or your price is wrong. And if you're getting clicks and landing page views but no sales, that tells you something specific, right? It means people are interested in the concept that you have, but they don't believe that you can deliver or they don't think it's worth the price. So you go back and you add more tangibility, you add more done for you aspects, and you add more testimonials, okay? You make your promise more specific, whatever the case may be. You iterate based on what the data is telling you. And if you're trying to scale and you're hitting a wall where your CPA is too high on your ads, that usually means one of two things. Either your total addressable market is too small and you need to broaden your avatar, or your funnel isn't optimized and you're leaking money somewhere along the line, right? Now, this is where you go back to the beginning of this framework and you reassess. You ask yourself, am I in the right market? Is my promise specific enough? Am I giving enough done for you aspects? Am I using their language? Most people just keep throwing money at ads hoping it'll magically work. But if your fundamentals aren't right, spending more money just loses you more money faster, okay? This is the framework. This is how you build offers that actually make money instead of offers that just sit there, right? And I know it may seem like a lot at once, but you do it once and it becomes a very repeatable system. So wherever you are right now in your business, go back to step one and ask yourself, did I actually do this? Because most of you skipped steps and that's why you're stuck. So if you do this in order, you follow this framework, you will build better offers. You will make more money and you will actually scale. Okay. But anyways, guys, that's it for the video today. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy or find this helpful, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And if you want me to work with you personally, check the link in my description and book a call. Thanks.